Billionaire CEO was with his mistress when he rejected his wife's call. He didn't know it was her last message. The heat settled over the road in slow waves, almost humming, and soft gospel floated from a neighbor's porch like someone had opened their window just enough for the world to borrow peace. It was the kind of day where everything felt still, except the things happening inside a person's heart. Beatrice stood in her living room, folding a cotton shirt that still smelled faintly of lavender detergent. She paused halfway through smoothing the sleeves, her fingers stopping in the air without meaning to. Something tugged at her chest, small, almost quiet, but sharp enough to make her blink. It was the nickname, or rather, the absence of it. Ryan hadn't called her B in weeks. It used to slip out of him so easily. During breakfast in the car, even when he walked past her just to pat her shoulder. A simple letter, but it carried warmth. Now, every time he said Beatrice, she felt the distance inside the formality. Like he was talking to someone he used to know, not someone he came home to. She tried to shake the feeling off, but her breath stalled just a little. A small detail, yes, but sometimes the small things are the ones that whisper the truth first. Outside, the Alabama sky shifted. Clouds gathered fast, too fast, like the weather was tired of holding itself together. A sudden rumble rolled across the neighborhood, heavy and loud enough that Beatrice's eyes lifted instinctively. Just as the thunder echoed, her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced over. A calendar reminder glowed on the screen, one she had forgotten she set weeks ago. Ryan's board dinner, don't forget to call tonight. Her lips parted slightly. That soft reminder felt heavier than it should have. The storm outside matched the one inside her chest. Why is it that the smallest changes feel like warnings, long before the truth arrives? If you're watching and you've ever felt a shift in someone you love, tap the like button. Not for the algorithm, but because your support helps stories like this reach someone who might need comfort today. Welcome to Mr. Graham's Stories, where we share meaningful life lessons through unforgettable moments. If you're new here, we're truly glad you stopped by. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories and drop a comment telling us the time and where you're watching from. The rain finally started to fall, tapping against the roof in soft, uneven rhythms. Alabama storms had a way of cooling the heat just enough to bring people closer or show how far apart they'd drifted. Beatrice stepped toward the kitchen window, watching the drops race each other down the glass. Her neighborhood was alive even in bad weather. Someone 2 houses down was frying chicken. She could tell by the way that seasoned scent carried through the air the moment the wind shifted. Children were still laughing on a porch across the way, pretending the storm made them brave. That was the thing about black Southern life. Storms didn't end the day. Folks just adjusted. It was a world where neighbors checked on each other, where Sunday meant real meals, and where love wasn't something you whispered about, it lived out loud. Beatrice grew up right here. She learned humor from her mother, resilience from the women at church, and pride from the long line of people who raised her with more faith than money. She'd always been the girl who laughed first, who encouraged others, who believed that even hard days could turn sweet with a little patience. Ryan had been nothing like her world, and maybe that was why she fell for him so hard. Their first meeting played in her memory sometimes without warning. He was in Alabama, visiting one of his company facilities, standing there in a crisp shirt that made him look like he stepped straight out of a business magazine. His confidence seemed effortless. He had the kind of posture that said he'd been handed things she'd worked twice as hard for. But he didn't talk to her like he was above her. He talked to her like she mattered. She remembered the way his smile softened when she joked about how he looked too expensive to be sweating in Alabama heat. He laughed, really laughed, and for a moment, it felt like 2 different worlds clicked into place. That day he'd said, "Your energy, it lights up a room." And she had believed him. She wasn't sure when that light stopped being something he noticed. Beatrice leaned her forehead gently against the cool window pane. These quiet moments, the ones you don't plan, were the ones that told the truth. Something had changed, not loud, not obvious, but enough to make her chest tighten in ways she couldn't explain. She tried to shake it off, tried to remind herself that every marriage had seasons, tried to remember the Ryan who held her waist at cookouts, who danced offbeat just to make her laugh, who insisted on taking her to his corporate events proudly, not hidden. But, lately, she couldn't find that version of him. And the unsettling part? She wasn't sure he was looking for her either. The storm outside continued, soft but steady, like the world was whispering something she wasn't ready to hear. The storm lingered longer than expected, drifting over the houses like a heavy thought no one wanted to claim. Beatrice dried her hands on a dish towel and moved through the living room, noticing the small details that told the story of a home in waiting. Ryan's jacket tossed over a chair again, a half-empty coffee mug he never finished, his laptop still open as if he planned to return but forgot. These weren't unusual things, not by themselves, but lately Beatrice felt like she was living next to a man instead of with him. Like the space between their routines had turned into a quiet hallway no one walked down anymore. She sat on the edge of the couch, listening to the hum of the air conditioner and the faint gospel drifting from outside. It reminded her of childhood afternoons when aunties gathered on porches and whispered about their husbands, half joking, half serious. Men go silent when something on their mind, one auntie always said, but when they go silent too long, baby, that's the part you pay attention to. Beatrice hadn't wanted to pay attention. She wanted her marriage to make sense, to feel familiar. She wanted Ryan to look at her the way he used to, with that quiet pride that made her feel like the luckiest woman in the room. She checked the time. Ryan should have been home by now. It was already past 7. She picked up her phone, thumb hesitating over his contact. Calling felt too needy. Not calling felt too passive. She didn't want to be the kind of wife who begged for attention, but she also wasn't the kind who pretended everything was fine. Instead of calling, she texted something simple. "Hope your day went all right." She stared at the message, wishing she could have said more, but afraid saying more would expose the ache she carried. 3 minutes passed. 5, 7, no response. Beatrice set the phone aside, inhaling slowly, trying not to let her thoughts run wild. This wasn't how things started. Their love used to move with ease, like two dancers who didn't need music to find rhythm. She remembered Ryan whispering into her neck during early mornings, telling her she made him feel grounded in a world that demanded too much from him. Now, she felt like an afterthought in the margins of his day. A soft knock from the storm-touched window pulled her gaze outside. Rain was easing up, but clouds still rolled overhead, shading the neighborhood in a quiet gray. Something about that sky made her chest heavy. A feeling she couldn't name, but one she couldn't ignore either. She whispered to herself, "Lord, give me patience or clarity. Just something." Her phone buzzed once, but it wasn't Ryan. Just another reminder she'd forgotten to disable. The loneliness of that moment settled deep. She didn't know it yet, but this silence would be the first step toward a night that would change everything. The rain finally settled into a soft hush by the time Ryan stepped through the door, long after Beatrice had finished her quiet routine of checking the window, glancing at her phone, and convincing herself not to read into the silence. His footsteps were familiar, but the tone behind them wasn't. He moved through the entryway like someone replaying work in his head, not like a man coming home to a wife who'd waited for him. He loosened his tie without looking up. "Long day," he muttered, setting his bag down. Beatrice forced a small smile. "I kept dinner warm." He nodded, but something in the nod felt absent, as if he were agreeing out of habit, not gratitude. When she led him to the kitchen, the plates were set neatly, candles lightly flickering even though she hadn't planned for romance. Sometimes a soft glow made a room feel less lonely. Ryan slipped into his chair with the weight of someone who carried too many expectations from the world and no space left for tenderness. She served him gently, the way she used to when they'd first married and found joy in the quietness of eating together. But tonight, he ate quickly. No conversation, no smile. His phone face up beside him, lighting up every few minutes with work notifications. Beatrice tried again. "So, did the new proposal go well today?" He shrugged. "It's fine. Everyone wants more from me." She reached across the table, letting her fingers brush his wrist. Not forcefully, just a soft reminder of connection. He moved his arm away without meaning to, reaching for his fork at the same moment. But the effect stung. She hid the hurt behind a tiny laugh. "It's starting to feel like you're working later and later. Alabama traffic must really love you." He cracked a faint smile. "Yeah, something like that." It wasn't enough. Later that evening, as he showered, she sat on the edge of the bed and whispered frustrations into her hands. The kind of things she wished she could say out loud. "Why won't you look at me the way you used to? Do you even notice how I'm trying?" But she knew saying those things might push him further. Southern aunties had warned her. You don't chase a man with questions, sugar. You just watch his patterns. His patterns tell the truth. So she watched. She watched the longer hours. The way he touched his phone more than her. The way he didn't notice when she wore the perfume he once said he loved. That night, as they climbed into bed, Beatrice scooted close, resting her head lightly against his shoulder. "Missed you today," she whispered. He hesitated, a pause too long. "Yeah, I'm just tired." She nodded into the darkness, pretending those words were enough, pretending the warmth in her chest wasn't turning into worry. Sometimes love dies in the places where honesty refuses to grow, and in that dim room, Beatrice felt the truth of it settle between them, like a space neither of them was brave enough to cross. Ryan left for Birmingham 2 mornings later, claiming it was a short business trip, meetings, networking, nothing unusual. Beatrice packed his bag carefully, folding his shirts with the same attention she gave him when their love felt effortless. "Call me when you land," she said, kissing his cheek lightly. "Of course," he replied, but the promise felt thin. As his car pulled away, she stood at the front door longer than necessary. Something inside her tugged. Not fear, more like intuition whispering that this trip carried a weight she couldn't explain. Hours later, in a hotel conference lounge across the state, Ryan straightened his collar and checked his reflection in a polished surface. He was surrounded by associates, investors, and business chatter he usually thrived in, but today he felt strangely restless. That's when he noticed her. Not by name, she would never carry a name in this story, but simply as the Mistress. She wasn't captivating in a dramatic way. Her presence came from something else, the way she looked directly at him with admiration that had no history attached. No expectations, no real intimacy. Just attention that landed too easily on a man who had been feeling unseen. She complimented his leadership, his decisiveness, his impact on the company, words Beatrice had said before, but when she said them, they were wrapped in love and truth. When the Mistress said them, they sounded like opportunity. Ryan didn't intend to enjoy the attention, but a small part of him, tired from the constant push of corporate life and the distance growing at home, leaned into it. He told himself it was harmless, a conversation, nothing more. Meanwhile, back in Alabama, Beatrice was cleaning the kitchen when she paused mid-step. Her chest tightened again, the same feeling from the night of the storm. She couldn't put her finger on it, but something felt off. She picked up her phone and typed, "Hope your trip is going well." No reply. Evening came. Still nothing. She placed her phone on the counter and pressed her palms against the cool surface, steadying her breath. The house felt too quiet, like the walls were listening. Back in Birmingham, the emotional pull between Ryan and the Mistress grew, not because of romance, but because she made him feel powerful, respected, elevated. She reinforced the version of himself he missed, and that was the danger. Not desire, not attraction, but the comfort of being admired by someone who didn't know where his cracks were. Beatrice sat on her porch that night, looking out at the neighborhood lights, telling herself she was overthinking. But her heart didn't believe it. Something was shifting. She could feel it, even if she couldn't name it. The emotional tension stretched between them across miles neither had the courage to acknowledge. When Ryan returned home, Beatrice greeted him with warmth, but there was a tired edge in her smile. He hugged her, brief, distracted. The scent on his clothes wasn't familiar, but she brushed the thought aside quickly, afraid of what her mind might create. He set his bag down and checked his phone immediately. Another message. Another pause. Another moment he slipped out of the present. Beatrice swallowed her questions. Instead, she went to the kitchen to prepare dinner, trying to make the house feel like comfort, in case he simply needed grounding. But the truth was different. Ryan had begun crafting small excuses, staying late, last-minute calls, vague explanations. Nothing dramatic enough to be suspicious, but just enough to blur the lines of his honesty. When Beatrice asked, "Are you coming home early tomorrow?" he responded, "Not sure. Depends on the workload." When she reached for him during the evening shows they used to watch together, he flinched slightly, not in rejection but surprise. As if he wasn't used to her touch anymore, she tried harder, cooking his favorite meals, lighting the house softly, asking about his day with genuine interest. She wasn't trying to win him back. She was trying to remind him of a home that once held them both, but their rhythm no longer aligned. He moved left when she moved right. She felt warm when he felt distant. One night, while folding laundry on the couch, Beatrice paused and whispered, "I'm losing him, and he doesn't even notice." Blind loyalty is not love. It is hope begging to be proven right. But Beatrice wasn't ready to give up hope. Not yet. She still believed that marriages could heal, that love could return, that distance could shrink with honesty. What she didn't know was that Ryan was already building a separate emotional world, quiet, hidden, unspoken. A double life not of passion, but of avoidance. And the shadows he created would soon swallow the truth she tried so hard to hold on to. The morning after Ryan returned from Birmingham, the house felt different to Beatrice, not in a way she could point to, but in the quietness that settled between the walls. She moved through the kitchen slowly, touching the back of a chair, smoothing the tablecloth, letting her fingers linger on things she used to rush past. It was as if she needed to hold on to something solid because everything inside her felt unsteady. Outside, Alabama carried its usual rhythm. Warm air drifting through open windows, a dog barking down the street, the faint sound of someone dragging a lawn chair across concrete. Life moved the way it always did, but Beatrice didn't feel part of it today. It was as if her world had paused, even while everything else kept going. She stood at the counter, staring at a small envelope she'd placed there earlier that morning. She had written Ryan a letter, something she hadn't done since their early days together, when expressing love on paper felt exciting instead of desperate. But today, she needed words that wouldn't tremble in her throat if she tried to speak them. The letter wasn't dramatic. It wasn't angry. It wasn't even long. It was honest. She wrote about missing him, about wanting to feel close again, about hoping they could talk, really talk, without brushing past the silence that had wrapped itself around their marriage. She placed her hand gently on top of the envelope, feeling the press of the ink beneath her palm. It warmed her slightly, a reminder that she was still trying. Still fighting, still hoping, but the weight in her chest didn't ease. When the wind shifted, the screen door rattled softly. Alabama weather had a way of mirroring emotions without permission, and today the sky felt heavy, swollen with the promise of rain that hadn't yet fallen. Beatrice inhaled slowly. She needed to hold herself together, but her body wouldn't cooperate. Her shoulders tensed, her breath trembled, and before she could stop it, a single tear escaped, not from heartbreak but from exhaustion. From carrying the weight alone. She wiped it quickly. She didn't want to crumble. Not yet. She reached for her phone, holding it longer than usual. Her thumb hovered over Ryan's name, Ryan, and she froze. Calling him felt harder than it should have. It wasn't fear of rejection. It was fear of hearing that distance again. The distance that made her feel like she was speaking into a hallway with no one listening at the other end. But today felt different. Today felt urgent. Something in her spirit pushed her to reach out. The same instinct that had been whispering to her through every quiet night, every unanswered message, every shift in his tone. She pressed her palm to her chest as if trying to slow the confusion swirling inside her. Talk to him. Don't wait. The thought came like a faint echo, gentle but firm. She picked up the letter again, folded it neatly, and placed it inside her purse. She planned to give it to him tonight, maybe over dinner, maybe during a quiet moment before bed. She didn't know, but she needed him to read it. She needed him to understand that she wasn't angry. She was hurting. The sky outside darkened slightly, even though it was barely mid-afternoon. Clouds gathered slowly, their edges blurred as if the weather itself felt unsure. Beatrice stepped onto the porch for a breath of fresh air, letting the warm breeze brush her cheeks. Alabama air always carried a mix of comfort and warning, like it wanted you to prepare for whatever came next. She closed her eyes. Lord, just give me strength to say what I need to say. Her phone vibrated once in her hand, not a message, just a reminder from her calendar. Call Ryan tonight. Important. Her throat tightened. She didn't know what the conversation would bring. She didn't know how he'd respond. But she knew this phone call, this moment, mattered more than any other in their marriage. She held the phone tightly, longer than she ever had, as if the answer she needed might rise through the metal and glass if she just waited long enough. Her emotional weight wasn't just heavy, it was shifting, forming, becoming something she could no longer carry quietly. And by the time she stepped back inside, Beatrice had made a decision. Tonight, she would speak her truth, no matter how hard it felt. The city lights of Birmingham glowed faintly through the hotel lounge windows, casting a soft shimmer across the room where Ryan sat with the mistress. The setting wasn't extravagant, just a quiet corner table, dimly lit, where business professionals often gathered after long meetings. Yet tonight, for reasons he didn't fully understand, the space felt like an escape. The mistress leaned forward slightly, laughing at something he said, not because it was particularly funny, but because she enjoyed the closeness. Her attention wrapped around him like a warm blanket, and he let it, not because he wanted anything more, but because feeling admired came too easily here. Back home, admiration came with history and expectations. Here, it felt simple. She touched his arm gently, a light brush that didn't cross into the forbidden, but hinted at the comfort she offered. Ryan didn't pull away. He didn't lean in either. He just sat there in a strange middle ground, guilty, but craving the ease of the moment. "You look lighter tonight," she said softly. He gave a short breath of laughter. "Do the first?" "Yes, like you finally let yourself breathe." He didn't respond, because admitting she was right would mean admitting he felt suffocated at home, and that wasn't fair to Beatrice. She didn't deserve that. She was everything good he'd ever known. But lately, he couldn't shake the pressure, the unspoken expectations, the weight of her sadness, the silence between them that made every conversation feel like walking across a cracked floor. The mistress, unaware of these thoughts, poured him another drink. "Relax," she said. "You're allowed to." He shouldn't have, but he did. Meanwhile, back in Alabama, Beatrice sat at the dining table, the lights dimmed low, her letter tucked inside her purse. She checked her phone again. Nothing. Not a text, not a missed call. Only the quiet buzz of an unanswered moment. She whispered into the empty room, "Please just let him pick up tonight." Her voice wavered, soft as wind against a screen door. Back in Birmingham, Ryan leaned back in his seat. The mistress watched him with interest, attention that wasn't earned, but offered freely, which made it dangerously easy to accept. He wasn't in love with her. He wasn't even drawn to her beyond the temporary lightness she gave him. But when she said, "You deserve to feel appreciated," something inside him tugged. He didn't deserve admiration, not today, not with the way his marriage felt fragile in his hands. He loosened his tie, and the mistress leaned closer. "Ryan," she murmured, "you work so hard. You should allow yourself moments like this." He almost flinched, not because of her words, but because deep down, he knew this wasn't a moment he'd want to remember later. He looked toward the table where his phone rested. It buzzed. Once, then again. Her name lit the screen, Beatrice. A name that always pulled him home, even now. His heartbeat stumbled. He stared at the screen, and in the brief seconds before the mistress spoke again, a dozen thoughts collided inside him. Is she okay? Does she need me? Should I step away and answer? Why does this feel so heavy? Is something wrong? The mistress asked, her tone curious, not concerned. Ryan swallowed hard. It's just, my wife. The mistress didn't look away, didn't shift back, didn't create space for him to choose the right thing. Instead, she said, maybe tonight you need a break from everything, even from answering right away. He hesitated. The phone buzzed again. He could have grabbed it. He could have stepped outside. He could have chosen the woman who loved him without hesitation. But instead, he pressed the side button with his thumb, and the call disappeared. Silenced. Rejected. The mistress smiled softly, unaware of the line he had just crossed inside his own heart. Some final messages don't come in words. They come in silence. And in that silence, Ryan didn't know he'd just dismissed the one call he should have answered. The rain returned to Alabama just after sunset, tapping lightly against the living room window where Beatrice sat alone. The house felt too quiet, too still. She had set the dining table earlier with 2 plates, hoping Ryan might come home in time for the small dinner she'd prepared. Now the food had cooled, and the candles she lit were nearly burned down. She stared at her phone, still unlocked on the home screen, as if waiting for something to change. But nothing did. Her call had gone unanswered. Part of her wanted to believe he was busy, genuinely busy. Meetings ran late, flights got delayed, work piled up. She tried to soothe herself with all the explanations she'd learned to create over the past few months. But underneath those thoughts, beneath all the soft excuses she made for him, something deeper pressed against her ribs, a quiet awareness that tonight wasn't like other nights. Tonight felt important, and the silence felt heavier than usual. Beatrice moved to the couch and sat down slowly, placing her phone on her lap. Her fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of everything she'd tried to hold inside. Memories of laughter, love, and promises flickered through her mind like short flashes of sunlight through clouds. She reached into her purse and pulled out the letter she had written earlier that day. The paper felt warm from being against her body. She unfolded it and read it over again, not because she doubted the words, but because she wanted to make sure her heart had spoken clearly. It had, but she realized something as she reread it. The letter wasn't enough, not for the moment she was in, not for the truth she needed to share. She picked her phone back up, tapped the recording button, and hesitated. She wasn't trying to create a dramatic speech or final declaration. She wasn't trying to guilt him or draw tears. She just needed him to hear her heart without interruption. Her breath steadied. "Ryan." Her voice cracked slightly, but she pushed through. "I don't know what's happening between us anymore, and I don't want to pretend that everything is fine. I love you, you know that, but I'm tired of feeling alone in this house. I'm tired of reaching out and feeling like I'm reaching through fog." She paused, swallowing the tightness in her throat. "I'm not calling to argue. I'm not calling to beg. I wanted to tell you that I miss you, I miss us, and whatever we need to fix, I'm willing to fight for it, but I need you to show up too." Her voice softened even more. "And if you're having a hard time, please just tell me. I can't help you if I'm kept in the dark." She breathed in, deeply. "I love you, Ryan. Please call me back." She ended the recording and sat there, staring at the phone as the message saved. A quiet ache spread through her chest, but she felt calmer. She had spoken her truth. She had said what her heart needed to release. She pressed send. The message left her screen with a simple whoosh, soft, unassuming, unaware of the weight it carried. Outside, thunder groaned somewhere in the distance, low and tired. Lightning illuminated the sky for just a moment, casting long shadows across her living room. Beatrice flinched slightly, pressing her hand to her stomach to steady herself. A wave of dizziness washed through her, unexpected, sharp, confusing. She blinked a few times, trying to clear it. She had been feeling off all day, brushing it aside as stress or exhaustion. But now, it felt different. She stood up slowly, gripping the arm of the couch. Okay, just breathe," she whispered to herself. But the room tilted again. Beatrice lowered herself back onto the couch, closing her eyes, waiting for the moment to pass. The rain grew louder, a steady drum that filled the silence. Her breathing deepened, slowed, steadied, almost too steady. Her phone buzzed beside her. Not a call, not from Ryan, just another automated alert. Her eyes fluttered halfway open. She tried to reach for the phone, but her arm felt heavier than usual. Still, she whispered softly into the quiet room, words only the walls would hear. "I just wanted one conversation, just one." Life doesn't always wait for the right moment to speak. Sometimes it delivers its message before we're ready to hear it. The rain continued. The room dimmed. And Beatrice's message, the one he had rejected, hung in the air like an unanswered prayer. The twist had already begun. Ryan just didn't know it yet. The next morning began without warning. Birmingham's sun leaked through the thin curtains of Ryan's hotel room, warm and indifferent to the chaos that had settled quietly inside his life. He stirred reluctantly, a dull ache behind his eyes from the night before, not from drinking but from the heavy mixture of guilt and escape he had allowed himself to taste. The mistress was gone. He barely remembered her leaving, only that she gave him a look that said, "I gave you attention, now go back to your life." He didn't feel proud of anything that had happened. He didn't even feel relaxed. He just felt numb. As he dressed and threw his belongings into his suitcase, he checked his phone out of habit. He expected work emails, maybe a missed text, maybe nothing at all. But the moment he unlocked the screen, his body froze. 10 missed calls, 3 messages, all from the same person, all from Beatrice. His chest tightened painfully. He tapped on the missed calls list, all placed around the same hour he'd been sitting with the mistress, convincing himself that one moment wouldn't change anything. A sharp knock sounded on his hotel door, startling him. "Ryan?" "It's Marcus from the board." Ryan stiffened. Marcus rarely showed up unannounced, especially at a hotel. He opened the door slowly. Marcus's expression carried a weight Ryan had never seen on him. His usual polished calm was replaced with something tight, hesitant. "Is everything all right?" Ryan asked automatically. Marcus exhaled, then placed a careful hand on his shoulder. You need to sit down." Ryan didn't move. His stomach twisted. "What's going on? Did something happen at the office?" "It's not the office." Marcus swallowed. "It's Beatrice." A cold rush struck his entire body. "What about Beatrice?" "There was an emergency call placed from your home address early this morning. The neighbors contacted help when they noticed she wasn't responding. The dispatcher said she was unconscious when they arrived." Ryan felt the room tilt. "Unconscious? From what?" "They didn't say. They just rushed her to the hospital. They tried calling you several times." Ryan's legs weakened. He gripped the doorframe to keep himself from sinking. He saw the missed calls again on his phone, the ones he hadn't answered. the ones he had silenced without a thought. Is she? The question barely escaped his throat. Marcus shook his head slowly. I don't know her condition yet. They said it was serious. Everything inside Ryan collapsed. He grabbed his suitcase with shaking hands, nearly dropping it. I need to go. I need to get home now. Marcus followed as he stumbled through the hallway. I'll drive. You're not in any shape to... I can drive, Ryan snapped reflexively, then softened instantly. No, you're right. I can't. Please. Let's go. The elevator ride felt endless. In the lobby, people carried on with their ordinary lives, eating breakfast, talking about weekend plans, checking out with smiles. And here he was, drowning. As they rushed to the car, Ryan's phone buzzed again, a message from someone in Beatrice's neighborhood. We're praying for her. Call us as soon as you can. His chest constricted so sharply he could hardly breathe, the kind of pressure that felt like the world itself was closing in. He leaned forward in the passenger seat, gripping his knees, his voice breaking apart. This can't be happening. I rejected her call. She needed me, and I... Marcus didn't interrupt. There were no words that could soften what Ryan was beginning to understand. As they sped down the Alabama highway, Ryan's mind spiraled through every moment of the past few months. The late dinners, the empty expressions, the way he drifted from the woman who had never drifted from him. He whispered into the rising daylight, barely audible. Please be okay. Please. Don't take her away before I fix this. But the morning didn't answer. It just stretched ahead of him, heavy and merciless. The drive back to Alabama felt longer than any trip Ryan had ever taken. The road blurred through a haze of fear he could barely contain. Marcus kept the car steady, silent except for the soft hum of tires against asphalt. Ryan appreciated the silence. It was the only thing keeping him from falling apart completely. When they reached the hospital, Ryan didn't wait for the car to stop fully. He pushed the door open and sprinted toward the entrance, chest tight, breath uneven. Every step felt like he was running toward a truth he wasn't prepared to hear. Inside the lobby, the fluorescent lights seemed too bright, the voices too loud, the world far too normal for the nightmare gripping his heart. He rushed to the reception desk. My wife, Beatrice, she was brought in this morning. I need to see her, please. The nurse looked up with soft eyes, recognizing urgency the moment she saw it. Are you her husband? Yes. The word cracked. Please, tell me she's okay. She hesitated, a brief pause that sliced through him. She's in critical care. A doctor will speak with you shortly. Critical. The word slammed into him. His knees weakened. Marcus guided him toward a nearby seat, but Ryan shook him off gently, unable to sit. He paced instead, running his hands through his hair, replaying everything he had ignored, every pause in Beatrice's voice, every smile she forced, every moment she'd stood next to him, waiting for connection that never came. He felt sick. As he turned away from the reception desk, something inside him cracked and memories rushed through him without permission. Beatrice laughing on their second date, head tilted back, the sun catching her cheek like she was lit from the inside. Beatrice sliding her hands around his waist in their kitchen, dancing with him while he burned toast. Beatrice whispering, "You're my safe place," into his chest on a night he'd been overwhelmed from work. He pressed a trembling hand to his mouth. He had forgotten what it felt like to be someone's safe place. He had forgotten she needed one too. Across the room, two older women, Alabama aunties from Beatrice's neighborhood, stood together, whispering prayers under their breath. One glanced Ryan's way and shook her head softly. Lord knows that girl loved him more than she loved sweet tea, she murmured. The other auntie sighed with a mix of pity and disappointment. Men don't notice what they have, till the good Lord reminds them. It wasn't said to wound him. It was truth spoken the way Southern women often spoke it, raw, direct, coated in compassion even when it hurt. Ryan lowered his head. He deserved every word. Minutes passed, maybe hours. He couldn't tell. Time felt meaningless. His phone buzzed in his pocket, and he flinched at the sound. He pulled it out with shaking hands. A notification blinked, one unheard voicemail from Beatrice. His stomach dropped. His thumb hovered over the play button, but he couldn't press it. Not yet. Hearing her voice meant confronting the call he had sent to silence, the message he had claimed he was too busy to answer. A doctor approached, but Ryan barely noticed. His entire world narrowed to the small rectangle in his hand. He whispered like a man in prayer, "Please let her be okay before I listen. Please." But the phone didn't care about his wishes. With trembling fingers, he pressed play. Beatrice's voice filled the quiet corner of the waiting room. Soft, tired, honest. "Ryan, I don't know what's happening between us anymore." He froze. Marcus, standing behind him, lowered his eyes respectfully. The voicemail played on, each word cutting deeper. Her confession, her longing, her plea for connection, her hope that love could still be repaired. He felt every syllable like a blade sliding through the ribs of regret. When she whispered, "I just wanted to talk to you tonight," Ryan collapsed into the chair behind him, unable to stand. He covered his face with both hands as the message ended with the sentence that shattered him. "I love you, Ryan. Please call me back." But he hadn't. Instead, he had been sitting in a hotel lounge with a woman who didn't know his history, his heart, or the vows he once made with sincerity. The first tear slipped down his face, then another. Marcus placed a hand on his shoulder. "Ryan, you couldn't have known." Ryan shook his head violently. "I should have answered. She needed me, and I turned away." His voice broke. At that moment, the doctor called his name, and Ryan realized his punishment wasn't the voicemail. It was the possibility that he might never get the chance to respond. The hallway to the critical care unit felt colder than the rest of the hospital, as if grief itself lingered in the air. Ryan followed the doctor with stiff, uneven steps, each one echoing too loudly in his ears. His heart hammered against his ribs, not from running, but from dread building inside him like a storm without warning. They stopped outside a room with the blinds partially drawn. "She's stable for now," the doctor said quietly. "But she's weak. We're still evaluating what caused the collapse. You can sit with her but speak gently. Stable. For now." Two words that offered hope and punishment in the same breath. Ryan nodded shakily and stepped inside. Beatrice lay on the bed, still and pale against the white sheets. Machines beeped softly at her side, each sound pulling on him like invisible strings. She looked peaceful, too peaceful, the kind of stillness that didn't belong to someone full of laughter, warmth, and stubborn resilience. He moved closer, afraid she would fade if he blinked. "Beatrice," he whispered, his voice breaking as he brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. "I'm here." But she didn't stir. He took her hand gently, realizing how cold it felt. He squeezed it, hoping she felt him, even through whatever fog held her captive. He lowered his head, his voice trembling. "I'm sorry. I should have answered. I should have been with you. I don't know how I let us get here, but please, please don't leave me like this." His shoulders shook. He had spent years holding emotion like a shield. Now it broke apart in his grasp. The weight of every ignored moment, every lost chance, every careless silence crashed down on him. He wiped his face, trying to steady himself, when his phone buzzed again, a small, sharp vibration against his pocket that startled him. He pulled it out, expecting another notification from a worried neighbor or coworker. But instead, he saw something unexpected. Another message, not a voicemail, a recorded audio clip, sent earlier than the one he had already heard. His breath caught. A second message, one he didn't know existed. He hesitated, glancing at Beatrice's still form. Then, with trembling hands, he pressed play. Beatrice's voice filled the quiet room, but this time, it was different. "Ryan, I don't know if you'll ever hear this one, but I wanted to say something before I lose the courage." Her tone was soft, but there was a steady undercurrent, the sound of someone holding on tightly to truth. "I've been feeling off lately, not just with us, but physically. I didn't want to worry you, but I haven't been sleeping well. I've been dizzy. I thought it was stress, but I think something is really wrong." Ryan's eyes widened. His heart pounded violently. "I wanted to tell you tonight. I wanted you to come home so we could figure it out together. But if you're overwhelmed, I understand. I just hope you know I never wanted to be a burden." A small silence followed, the kind that stings. "I miss you, Ryan, more than I've said. And I'm scared. I just needed you to pick up tonight." His knees weakened. He sat heavily in the chair beside her, pressing the phone to his forehead, eyes squeezed shut as tears escaped. He whispered, "Why didn't you tell me sooner? I would have helped you. I swear I would have." But even as the words left his mouth, he knew the truth. She had tried. He had been too busy looking elsewhere for comfort to notice her unraveling quietly beside him. The message continued. "Whatever happens, I want you to know I loved you. Even when it was hard, even when I felt like we were losing each other, I still loved you." Ryan's chest tightened so sharply he leaned forward, gripping the edge of her bed as if it were the only thing keeping him upright. The audio ended. Silence settled heavy around him, not empty, but full of things he could no longer undo. He lifted her hand to his lips, resting it there, tears falling onto her skin. "I'm here now," he whispered. "I'm here. And I'm not walking away again. I'll fix this. I'll take care of you. Just please, please wake up." His voice trembled with a desperation he'd never felt, the realization that the woman he'd taken for granted had been fighting her own quiet battle alone. He sat there for a long moment, breathing through the pain, until he finally looked into the camera of his phone, not to speak to the audience, but to steady his thoughts. If you're still here, subscribe so you never miss a story that reminds us how fragile love can be. But Ryan wasn't thinking about subscribers. He was thinking about the message that changed him, the truth he almost missed, and the woman he prayed he hadn't lost forever. Morning sunlight crept slowly across the hospital floor, climbing the wall like a hesitant visitor. The world outside didn't know what Ryan had learned, didn't know how deeply the second message from Beatrice had carved through him. But inside this room, everything had changed. Ryan sat at her bedside, her hand resting in his, a faint warmth still lingering in her fingertips. He hadn't slept, not for a minute. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her collapsing alone, calling for him, hoping he would pick up. Every time he blinked, he heard her whisper in that second recording, "I've been feeling off. I didn't want to worry you." The guilt was a weight he wasn't sure he could ever put down, but today, for the first time in a long time, he wasn't thinking about himself. He wasn't thinking about work, pressure, image, or expectations. He was thinking about Beatrice, only her. A nurse stepped quietly into the room, checking the IV line and Beatrice's vitals. Ryan watched her movements closely, desperate for any sign of change. "How is she?" he asked, voice tired but steady. The nurse offered a soft expression. "She's still stable. We're running more tests. Sometimes it takes the body time to recover from something overwhelming." He nodded, though the words didn't calm him. Nothing would, not until Beatrice opened her eyes. When the nurse left, Ryan leaned closer and whispered, "I know you can't hear me, or maybe you can, I don't know, but I need to say this anyway." His thumb brushed the back of her hand. "I'm done living half-present. I'm done letting work consume me. I'm done ignoring what matters just because it's easier to hide in routine instead of facing the truth." He paused, his voice cracking. "You deserved a better version of me, and if you wake up, you'll get him." He meant it. Every word. Something had changed in him, deeply, quietly, the kind of change that didn't announce itself with loud promises, but revealed itself through clarity. The clarity that losing someone, almost losing them, strips away illusions you didn't know you were living in. He looked around the hospital room. On the small counter beside her bed sat a few items the EMTs had grabbed from the house, her purse, the letter she'd written, her phone charger. He reached for the purse and pulled out the folded paper she had painstakingly written the night before. The letter. He smoothed it open slowly. The ink carried her handwriting, steady, graceful, full of heart. As he read the words again, tears blurred the page. She had been reaching out, hoping for connection, hoping for reconciliation. She had been trying in ways he had refused to see. He pressed the letter to his chest. "I am going to be the man you believed I could be," he whispered. "Not out of guilt, but because you loved me enough to ask for honesty when I gave you distance." He stood and walked to the small sink in the room. The mirror above it reflected someone he barely recognized, not the polished CEO, not the confident decision-maker, not the man who walked through life certain of his importance. He saw a man humbled, a man reshaped, a man who finally understood that love wasn't sustained by admiration, but by attention. He returned to her side and pulled out his phone. Work emails cluttered the screen, demanding his input. Messages from his board piled up, flashing urgent requests. He deleted the notifications one by one. Then, slowly, deliberately, he composed a new email. "Effective immediately, I am taking personal leave. Family emergency. Do not contact me unless absolutely necessary." He hit send without hesitation. For once, the company would not come first. Beatrice would. He placed the phone face down. "I'm here now," he told her, "and I'm not going anywhere." Outside, the Alabama sky began to brighten. Not clear yet, still streaked with thin clouds, but lighter than before. The world was shifting, quietly, slowly, in the same way Ryan felt something shift inside himself. He leaned forward and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. "You're not alone," he whispered. "Whatever happens next, I'll walk through it with you." He didn't know if she heard him, but he hoped. And for the first time in a long time, hope felt like purpose instead of a burden. The hours passed slowly, as though the world itself wasn't sure how to move forward, until Beatrice opened her eyes. Ryan remained at her bedside, his fingers lightly wrapped around hers, studying every shift in her breathing, every faint flutter beneath her eyelids. He wasn't waiting for perfection. He just needed a sign she was still fighting. Late in the afternoon, a nurse stepped in with a tablet. "Mr. Hayes, there's something the staff found when organizing her personal items. It was in her phone files, marked with a lock, but the emergency access system opened it. It looks like she recorded it last night." Ryan's breath caught. "Another recording?" He took the tablet slowly, afraid to even tap the screen. The nurse gave a gentle nod and slipped out of the room. Ryan hesitated, glancing at Beatrice's still face. She looked peaceful, but there was something fragile beneath that calm, like someone holding onto the edge of a dream. He tapped the file. Beatrice's voice filled the room again, but this time, it sounded different, softer, trembling slightly, almost as if she knew she was saying something she hadn't gathered the strength to speak aloud. "Ryan, if you're hearing this, I guess I didn't get the chance to tell you in person." Ryan's pulse slowed. His stomach tightened. "I found out something yesterday, something I didn't know how to process yet." He leaned forward, gripping the tablet, his heart pounding in his throat. "I wasn't going to tell you until I was sure, but I want you to know now, in case I lose the courage later." She inhaled shakily in the recording. "I think I'm pregnant." Ryan froze. Every part of him went still, mind, breath, heartbeat. Pregnant. The word echoed through the room like a soft bell that rang only once but vibrated through bone. His grip on the tablet loosened, and he pressed his free hand over his mouth, unable to stop the rush of emotion that slammed into him. Beatrice continued. "I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I was planning to take another test tonight. After we talked, I wanted to tell you with hope in my voice, not fear. But the dizziness, the weakness, it scared me more than I wanted to admit." Ryan hunched forward, elbows on his knees, shaking. "I wanted our child, if this is really happening, to come into a home where both of us are present, where we're honest, where we're trying. I didn't want to tell you in a moment when we felt far apart." Her voice softened further. "You are going to be a wonderful father, Ryan. I always believed that. I hope we find our way back to each other before this baby arrives." A silence followed, long, breathy, emotional. Then the final line. "Whatever happens, know that this was never about blame. It was about love. I just wanted you to hear my heart." Before the world made things complicated, the recording ended. Ryan sat frozen, staring at the darkened screen, unable to breathe. Pregnant. Beatrice, the woman he had drifted from, hurt, ignored, and taken for granted, had been carrying a truth that could have changed everything. A truth she wanted to share with him gently, lovingly, even while she feared for her health. Tears pooled in his eyes and fell onto his hands. He wasn't the type to cry easily, but something about this truth, this unborn life he didn't know existed, broke him in a way guilt never could. This wasn't regret. This was revelation. He stood slowly and walked to the window, pressing his palm against the cool glass. The parking lot below shimmered under the afternoon light, ordinary and unaware that his entire world had shifted. He whispered into the silence, "I should have answered. I should have been home. I should have held you when you felt scared." He turned back to her, a new resolve gathering in his chest, not desperate, not frantic, but clear. This wasn't just about saving their marriage anymore. It was about honoring the life she had trusted him to help bring into the world. He returned to her bedside and sat down, lifting her hand gently. "Beatrice, I heard you, all of it, and I promise you, I will be the man our family needs. I won't let this be the end of us. I won't let fear or distractions take me away again." He kissed the back of her hand, lingering there, feeling the faint warmth of the woman he loved. Outside, clouds parted, allowing a beam of sunlight to slip through the window, quiet, soft, almost as if the world was acknowledging the turning point inside this small hospital room. For the first time since arriving here, Ryan felt something new rising inside him. Not guilt, not fear, not sorrow. Purpose. The hospital room was quiet, holding a stillness that felt sacred rather than heavy. Afternoon sunlight softened against the pale curtain, brushing gently across Beatrice's face as she lay motionless, her breathing steady but slow. Beside her, Ryan sat with his head bowed, her hand clasped between his palms like he was holding the last warm piece of his heart. He wasn't crying anymore, not because the pain had eased, but because something inside him had shifted, something rooted deeper than regret. For the first time in a long time, Ryan wasn't thinking about what he had lost. He was thinking about what he needed to protect, what he needed to become. His gaze drifted to the small speaker icon on the tablet where he'd listened to Beatrice's final recordings. Her voice still lingered in his mind, the softness, the honesty, the quiet fear she'd carried alone. And the word that changed everything, pregnant, a truth she hadn't gotten to share face to face, a truth she'd been preparing her heart for, a truth that had arrived in his life like a second chance wrapped inside pain. He leaned forward, brushing her knuckles with his thumb. "You weren't just trying to save us," he whispered. "You were trying to protect something new, something we created." His voice cracked, but he held her hand steady. "I didn't show up for you," he continued softly. "But I'm going to show up now, for both of you, every day, in every way." He lifted her hand to his forehead, pressing it there for a moment of reverence he'd never felt before. A gentle knock sounded on the door. A nurse peeked in, offering a small smile. "She's still stable," she said kindly. "Her body is fighting, but she's holding on." Ryan exhaled a shaky breath. "Thank you." The nurse nodded and left, closing the door quietly behind her. Ryan stood and walked toward the window, watching cars roll into the parking lot below, families visiting loved ones, people stepping into new fears or new hopes. Life continued outside, unaware of the transformation happening inside him. He thought of every moment he had taken for granted, the mornings he rushed through, the conversations he cut short, the affection he shrugged off. He thought of how easily he accepted attention from someone who offered admiration without history, while the woman he vowed to cherish carried her fears alone. He pressed his palm against the window. "Love doesn't disappear overnight," he murmured to himself. "It fades when we stop feeding it, and I let ours starve." The narrator's voice rose gently in the stillness, reflective and honest. "Some lessons don't arrive through arguments or apologies. They arrive through the echo of a heart you almost lost, reminding you that care is not a feeling, it is a practice." Ryan turned back toward Beatrice, walking slowly, each step clearer than the last. He sat down again, lifting her hand with a tenderness he hadn't shown in too long. "I don't know what tomorrow looks like," he said quietly, "but I know this: if you open your eyes, if you give me another chance, I'll build a life where you never have to question your place in it." He paused, letting the truth settle in the room. "And if our child is real, if you're carrying a piece of both of us, then I owe you more than promises. I owe you presence. I owe you a love that doesn't hide behind excuses." The monitors beeped steadily beside her. Her chest rose and fell. She remained still, but he continued speaking, because words were all he had, and he needed her to hear them, even if she couldn't yet respond. "You didn't fail us," he whispered. "I failed you, but I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving that this moment changed me." Outside, the sunlight grew warmer, spilling across her blanket as though nudging the room toward gentleness. A quiet peace settled over him, not a release from fear, but the understanding that fear meant there was something worth fighting for. He lowered his forehead to her hand again, letting his breath steady against her skin. "If you love someone, answer the call, not just the one on your phone, the one in their silence." Ryan closed his eyes, holding onto her hand as though it anchored him to the world. "Beatrice," he whispered, "I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." And in that stillness, with hope balancing on a fragile edge, the story left its final truth in the hands of love, the kind that demands more than words. Share this story with someone who needs its message.